All right, so we are essentially mid-season now, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that will spend a lot of time in the field in September. That'll roll over into October. Some guys have November hunts, December, even stuff in Arizona opening in January. So for some, this is more like 30% of the way through hunting season or even activity season, right? A lot of people just get out and spend a lot of time outdoors this time of year. So what does that look like for going the distance? How do you stay well fueled to feel like you can actually make it the duration of the season, as opposed to gassing out midway through, not being able to recover well and finish strong, right? It's really easy to start the season well, but the true litmus test happens when you get midway through the season, continuing to have enough activity to make sure that you make it through the end, and not just make it, but make it with enough energy to really enjoy the trip. So 4 components that we're going to review today to make sure that you make it the duration. Calories, namely from carbohydrate replacement. We're going to go through these one by one as well. Simple and quick here. Fluids, make sure that you're getting plenty of fluids to recover. Electrolyte replacement, and then of course rest. There's no better muscle than the rested muscle, right? No muscle performs better than one that's had adequate rest. So calories, namely from carbohydrate. So consuming enough calories at maintenance to replace any of the used fuel stores. We know that fuel stores up in 2 spots: liver and muscle glycogen. The body then takes that glycogen, breaks it down for energy when the body needs it. So a key component to recovery and making it through the duration of any type of season or event is replacement of those stores, and not just once, but constant replacement of those stores. So making sure that you're getting a primary fuel source during intense efforts of carbohydrate of 2 to 3 grams carbohydrate per pound of lean body mass. So if you're above the weight that you want to be at, then it would be less than that. If you're at the weight that you want to be at, relatively lean or what have you, or your activity is very, very high, then that could be a good dose for you. So remember that 2 rules of thumb there. Next, we're going to look at fluids between hunts or between activities, making sure that you're consuming anywhere between 1 milliliter to 1 milliliter per calorie that you consume. So if you're consuming 2,000 calories per day, that's roughly 2,000 milliliters or about 2 liters of water. Now, that's just a baseline, right? You could be more thirsty, you could want more, so having more than that would be appropriate, but aiming for that to sort of be the threshold of a minimum. Thirst rules, meaning if you want more, you can certainly have it. During hunts, trying to target certain amounts at certain times. And then you'll see again down here, we've got an amount that we talk about for trying to replace carbohydrate. An excellent way to accomplish 2 birds with 1 stone is to make sure that you have plenty of fluids, but to also make sure that part of that comes from an electrolyte replacement, so you're not flushing those electrolytes out, as well as some sort of a carbohydrate mix that replaces those used fuel stores. And that could be as simple as something like Gatorade. As that activity increases, you'll see that the amount goes up, right? So the amount as that activity increases goes up, because we know that you can metabolize anywhere between 1 and 1.5 grams of carbs per minute you're active. So if you're really active, you're more on the 1.5 grams per minute. If your activity is not quite that challenging, then you're more at the 1 gram per minute, right? And that's where those numbers come from. It's aimed at replacing the fuel source that you've already used. Moving on, we're going to look at electrolytes. This is a very rough thumb, right? Rough estimate. There are really challenging ways that we can measure very accurately, but most of us common folk don't have that. It's usually in the university setting, right? So I think a couple of things that you could keep in mind here to replace this. You could look at something called SCAPS, which is a sodium replacement alone, or simply by some type of, like we saw on the last slide, electrolyte replacement mix. Gatorade endurance formula is noted to be higher in sodium than regular Gatorade formulation, as well as something called Tailwind. Tailwind's a little pricier. Some people like it more. Gatorade Endurance is kind of the same formulation with some variances, similar sodium content. So that might be 2 ways that you look at this and think about getting it. And don't be mistaken, if you've got stuff, activities or hunts planned later in the season when it's cold, it doesn't mean that you don't need replacement. You're still burning fluid, you're still using electrolytes. So keep that in mind as you think about what your actual needs are. Next, finally, rest. Key to staying strong all season is rest of the muscle and restoration of nutrition in that muscle. Nutrition is not just filling those used stores, but resting it. And when you're resting it, you're essentially cutting off the drain, right? So if we have a proverbial tank and that tank has a plug in the bottom of it, and every time you exercise, that tank gets drained, even if you're filling that tank up, there still is something that's leaking. It's never going to have the opportunity to be completely full. But when we shut that drain off with something like rest, then we're filling it. And now all of a sudden the tank has the opportunity to be full so that whenever you're asking the most out of it, the next time that you go out, it's available, right? So 4 key things: calories, namely from carbohydrate replacement, fluids, electrolyte, and rest. If you're not already ending your season, have an excellent rest of your season. We'll talk to you soon. Feel free to send me a message if you've got any questions. If you need some additional help, you can apply for coaching. If you just want to chat, I'd love to chat with you too. We'll talk to you later.